Today I'm going to be speaking to Virginie Lurkin, an associate professor at HEC Lausanne, University of Lausanne. Virginie is passionate about sustainable mobility and believes that empirical insights are the key to finding sustainable solutions that can help foster behaviour change and shape legislation. Virginie, thank you for joining us for this final podcast in our series on reimagining sustainability.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start with the basics. What exactly is sustainable mobility?
So sustainable mobility means moving people, but also goods in ways that are efficient, safe, and that reduce negative impacts on the environment, health, and society. In Switzerland, over 60% of trips are still made by private car, and most of those cars carry just one person. So this heavy reliance on fossil fuel cars does lead to congestion, but also affect the environment and our daily lives. So in practice, if you ask me what's sustainable mobility, for me, it goes back to finding solutions that reduce our dependence on single occupancy fuel burning cars.
What are some of the latest trends in sustainable mobility?
So an easy but bit naive answer would be electric cars. Of course, I think they are an important part of the solution. There is no question that they eliminate tailpipe emissions, so it helps reducing pollution and improving air quality. But for me, electric cars still take up road space, so they don't really fix congestion. And they also come with environmental challenges of their own. So for me, again, they are part of the solution. The bigger shift is what we call modal shift in the field, and it would be replacing certain car trips with other options, or even better, combining different modes of transport. So let me give you an example. It would be someone who take a train for the long part of their journey, but then they may have to switch to a bus or a shared e-bike for the last few kilometers. Or they may choose to walk for those last few kilometers. So you have a combination of different modes of transport.
That's a lot of potential choices.
Indeed. And that's why mobility apps exist. There are more and more of those apps in the market, and they help people to make it easy to plan, but also pay for trips using multiple modes.
Tell us a bit about your research on cargo bikes.
So with a colleague, with this idea of multimodality, we were also interested in the role that cargo bikes can play. And the reason is that often car use is justified because of the kids, or the idea that I have to do groceries, so I need their cargo capacity. And in that sense, cargo bike offer this. So we were very interested in their potential. So we did a big survey in Switzerland, asking both cargo bike owners, but also people who use it in a shared way, how they use it, motivation, and so on. For me, the most interesting part was that cargo bike users and owners maybe still have a car, so it doesn't lead to the idea of abandoning the car. But for instance, it helps them to not having the need for a second car. So it's still reducing the trips that are made by car. For me, sustainable mobility, it's not about banning cars, but it's about giving people flexible, practical choices, and cargo bike may be one of them. In combination with electric cars, shared vehicles, those multimodal apps. And all together, they can help people make small changes, but all those small changes adding up, it can lead to a big impact, I'm sure.
I read that a top-end cargo bike can cost more than 10,000 Swiss francs. Is this an elite lifestyle choice reserved for privileged, eco-conscious people who can afford it?
It's a fair question. So yes, some cargo bikes can be very expensive, and I don't think everyone could now afford to buy a cargo bike. But I think the cost you mentioned still represents high-tech segment of the market, and there are quality functional models that are less expensive. And also it's important to compare the total cost of ownership to that of a car, right? So you have to consider fuel, insurance, maintenance. So I think cargo bikes can be cost efficient over time. But indeed, I agree, it should not become a symbol of privilege. And for me, sustainable mobility should definitely be inclusive. And so it means that we need to have financial support mechanism For instance, employer subsidies, maybe also public awareness campaigns to ensure that cargo bikes are accessible to more than just a niche group.
Road safety is a critical issue when it comes to cycling. What are some of the latest initiatives being proposed to help make this mode of transport safer?
Yeah, thank you. That's indeed true. We also observed it in the survey on cargo bike. So safety is the biggest obstacle for people who want to cycle. And so even more when you have your kids, for instance, on the cargo bike. So I think there are different initiatives in progress in Switzerland and overall. So we see more and more segregated bike lanes. We see this, for instance, also expanding in Lausanne and Geneva. We also seeing efforts on school safe routes, digital navigation apps that are also tailored for cyclists. We also are discussing education programs that would try to also help the older people who, for instance, never biked in their life to try it. At the University of Lausanne, very concretely, we have a group of experts, including myself, that discuss how we could also make the campus safer for cyclists. Inspired, for instance, by the map of Lausanne West, that's a velo map. We are thinking how we could create such a map for the campus. So all the safe paths from different points in the city to the campus. Another exciting idea is the creation of a WhatsApp group for the UNIL community, where cyclists could share live updates, exchange knowledge, or even report incidents or issues on the road in real time. And for me, this is very important. I think we do need knowledge sharing, and it can break down mental barriers, and it can help people to feel more confident.
How inclusive are today's sustainable mobility policies?
Inclusion is the cornerstone of truly sustainable mobility. Current policies tend to focus for me too much on urban populations, but rural, peri-urban communities are often left behind. While it's true in Switzerland, but also in Europe, that many people commute from the countryside, and for them, full replacement of the car may not be feasible. So park and ride systems, last mile solution, and mobility hubs, I think, will be very important to help them. I also think that overall we need policies that consider like the heterogeneity of the people. So we need to consider age, physical ability, cultural differences, because all of those explain also mobility practice. And we need to acknowledge that what feels safe or normal for a young urban commuter, it may be very intimidating for an elderly person. So I really believe policy should promote intergenerational but also cross-demographic participation in the mobility conversation.
How important are role models?
Role models for me are everything. I really think they are absolutely crucial. I mean, in many decisions, but especially also mobility behavior. That's why when I joined UNIL, I think a wonderful example I got was to see this Nobel Prize winning professor at UNIL. Or I heard when he was asked to, what do you want as a reward for this Nobel Prize? He asked for a dedicated bike parking space. And now each time I see that it probably displays his name and Nobel Prize, I find it wonderful. It's maybe symbolic, and some people would think it doesn't change anything, but for me it's very powerful. And I think it's very important that we see on the campus professors, rectors cycling, and this will create a culture of normalcy and inspiration around sustainable choices.
When it comes to sustainable mobility, are there any issues holding back progress?
I think it's mainly two things. I would say for me, the first is that blame and guilt backfire, I always say. And sustainable mobility has been associated with moral and like guilt and blame. But I think we need to really highlight joy, health, simplicity, community. And that's why we can really drive change behavior. Then the second will be that I think it's hard because of the perception of insignificance. So if I take the bike today, will it matter, right? It's raining, so it's easy to tell us that it will anyway not change anything, so let's not do it. So individual actions seem small, and I think that policies often fail to provide visible, cumulative feedback that would really help people to feel that are part of a bigger change. So there is this lack of joined up thinking. Sustainable mobility, at the end of the day, it involves infrastructure, land use, taxation, public transport integration. And so we really need to have everyone on board in a very positive, enthusiastic discussion. So regarding sustainable mobility policies, I think what's really lacking also now is this joined up thinking. So we really need to have everyone around the table. And cargo bike, for example, they work best when paired with good road networks, parking solution, support from employers and governments. So we cannot work in silos.
If you had to imagine a day living in a city that was truly designed for sustainable mobility and well-being, what might that look like?
I imagine waking up, stepping outside into calm, green, low traffic neighborhood. And the street would be filled with children walking or cycling to school safely, elderly people on electric bikes, for instance, cargo bikes for making local deliveries or go to the groceries. I would also, of course, imagine public transport is frequent, clean, seamlessly integrated with shared bikes, for instance. So absolutely no noise pollution, air is fresh. Also, local shops will strive because food traffic would be high and you would not feel the need to rush. So basically, it would be a calm city designed for people, not machine or like rush.
That sounds wonderful.
Yes, it is indeed. But you know what? We rarely speak about the positive aspect of sustainable mobility. We rather hear about the complaints, the people not having parking spots, the drivers who say they cannot enter city centers, and so on. So there is a lot of negativity around. While I do think that it will be way more efficient to go back to a very positive speech about sustainable mobility and highlighting the happier people in a better health, living in quieter neighborhoods. So for me, communication is also key. And actually, it makes me think of this communication I saw from the Wallonia in Belgium that I found wonderful. That rather than depicting the car dependency as negative and so on, they did a short film that depicted a breakup between a person and their car, and then followed by them falling in love with their bike. And it was really wonderful because they understood that you can also use humor and storytelling to humanize the transition. So at the end, sustainable mobility must appeal to the heart and the head. I really don't think it should be a topic of blame and guilt and so with so much negativity. So we really need to go back to mobility stories that people can see themselves in and they can see them happy. So at the end of the day, it's going to be people who decide about sustainable mobility and they must do the change. So for me, I'm convinced that it means it must appeal to the heart and the head. Blame or guilt will never work. We really need a positive story and that people see themselves in the city I was just describing.
Thank you, Virginie, for sharing your positive outlook on sustainable mobility today.
Thank you.